This will be for the con exercise, positive and negative intervals. All right, so we are basically looking at the y values. And if you take the x-axis right here, that's y equals 0. Okay, and if you are anywhere above the x-axis, the graph is considered positive. All right, and if you are anywhere below the x-axis, the graph is considered negative. All right, so the positive is just above the x-axis, and the negative is just going to be below the x-axis. All right, pretty simple. And finally, for the interval, it's going to be the x values. Okay, so they're going to ask us where the graph is positive, where the graph is negative, and we have to find the x values where the graph is positive or negative. Okay, it's going to be an interval greater than, less than. All right, so here is our graph, y equals f of x. Select the interval where f of x is greater than 0. Okay, remember we said f of x is just another way of writing y. So basically, we're looking at the part of the graph where y is greater than 0. So we can basically just highlight it. Here's the x-axis. This part here is above the x-axis. So this part here, the graph is considered positive. And this section right here, the graph is also considered positive. So that's basically it. So let's look at the choices here. And really, let me see here. This runs from -5 to almost -3. All right, we're looking at the x values. And this one here, the x-axis we're looking at, this runs from 0, and that runs to about 3. So I would say the choices that are between -5 and -3 and 0 and 3. All right, let me write that off to the side. X is between -3 and -5, and also 0 and 3. Okay, I don't think you have to worry about equal to. I don't think it's going to be that technical. So I would say anywhere point that falls in this range, or range of values right here. All right, so only one answer. -2 and -1, that does not fall in here. 1 and 2, yes, 1 and 2 falls in between 0 and 3. 4 and 5 does not. If you want to double check on the graph, check the x values between 1 and 2. Let's go to the graph. All right, and here is the x-axis. Here is the x-axis. Here's 2. Here's 1. We can clearly see the graph in this section is above the x-axis. The graph is clearly positive in that section. So answer B. All right, select the interval h of x. In other words, y is less than 0. All right, because I'm sure they named the function h of x. All right, and they want the interval where it is less than 0. And that just means below the x-axis. Okay, if the y value is how far up or down, and you want the part that's less than 0, it's going to be the negative section of the graph for the y values below the x-axis. All right, let's look at the choices here. Between -3 and -2, all right, if we go to the x-axis between -3 and -2, we can see in this section here, the graph is positive, so that's no good. Between 2 and 3, all right, so if we go to x-axis between 2 and 3, right here and right here, this section of the graph is positive. That's no good. Finally, x between 4 and 5. All right. X-axis, here's 4, here's 5. And if you check the graph in this section, it is clearly below the x-axis. It's negative right in here. So this is the part of the graph that is less than 0, between 4 and 5. I mean, of the choices, of course, it's less than 0 here, it's less than 0 there, but this was the only choice. All right, between 4 and 5. Select the interval where h is positive. All right, where is the graph positive? Anywhere above the x-axis, it's considered positive. Right there, it's considered positive. Right there, everything else is negative. Let's look at the choices. Between -4 and -3. Okay, between -4 and -3, we can see right here, this section is negative. It's below the x-axis, so that's no good. Between -2 and 0. All right, I think it's the same thing. Between -2 and 0, that is also below the x-axis, so that's no good. Finally, x is between 2 and 3. All right, here's the x-axis. Between 2 and 3, we can see the graph is all the way up here. So this section is definitely positive. That is above the x-axis. So 2 and 3 is the positive section. All right, select the interval where g is negative. So that's just below the x-axis. Anything here and anything here. Here's the x-axis, so anything below it. All right, so let's take a look. 0 and 1. 0 and 1 is right here. That's this section of the graph. Yes, between 0 and 1, x equals 0 and 1. In this section here, the graph is clearly below the x-axis right there. So that's it. That's the negative portion. All right, so don't get confused with slope. We're not talking about slope for negative or positive. We're talking about above or below the x-axis, not the slope.